and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm so glad that you guys and girls can join me today. In my particular animated movie, I've got this cool looking alien character that lands on top of a school bus, and then he's got to tear through the school bus to break through and get inside. I needed to create some morphs, or as Blender refers to it, as shape keys. I needed to create some shape keys as he was walking on the bus and breaking through, and I want to share with you guys how I did that. So basically going through Blender, animating in iClone, and then rendering it in Unreal Engine. But enough of me talking. I'm going to show you a short little clip as to what the ultimate goal of today's tutorial is, and then I'll take you through it step by step. Okay, so what exactly are we going to need or require for the scene, and which shape keys are we going to be creating inside Blender? So the first thing we're going to need obviously is our alien. There's our alien, tick. And then of course we're going to need a school bus, another tick. And then we're going to need some form of scene. Now this scene is more of a dummy scene inside iClone. My final scene, as you will see later on, is actually inside Unreal Engine. And then in terms of our shape keys, we're going to have to create 4 different types. The first one will be when the alien lands and all his subsequent steps, we're going to have to make the metal bend essentially. And then the second one will be when he bends down and he slices through the roof with his cool alien sword. And then the third and big one will be a cut hole inside the roof, which he'll eventually jump down. And then the fourth one is actually the light fitting itself, that as he steps, those are going to be bending. So we have to create the shape key for that as well. Okay, now that we know what we're going to do, let's go. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to export our bus and our alien into Blender from iClone, and that's quite simple. We're going to start off with our school bus. To export that out of iClone, you go to File, Export FBX, and then inside the FBX window, we're going to choose the Blender preset, and then we're going to stick to current frame because there's no animations on the bus, and we'll export that. We'll name it accordingly. And once it's exported, we will then import it into Blender. So over to Blender we go to File, Import FBX, and we'll find our file and click on our file, and we'll import the bus. And before you know it, our school bus will be inside Blender. Now we're going to go back to iClone again so we can grab our character. We will then grab our alien, and we'll do the same thing. We'll go File, Export FBX. Once again, choose the Blender setting. And then this time around, we're actually going to go to Range because we actually want to export this alien with the actual animation, because we're going to be using the animation to set our blend shapes on the right position. So we'll go File, Export, and then name it accordingly, and we'll export that. The difference this time around is I'm going to bring my character in using the Soup Day plugin, which is a special CC4 iClone plugin for Blender. If you haven't heard about it or checked it out yet, I would suggest you Google it. For now, I'm going to just leave the link to the Soup Day plugin in the description below, where you can go and download it. It's a free plugin, and what it does is that actually it's made for characters. It actually brings your characters in with all of the materials ready to go. So once you've installed the plugin and you go into Blender, you'll find it on the right hand side. So you hit the N key, or you click on the CC4 pipeline. That's the actual plugin, and then we'll just import our character. So we'll go to import character and bring him into Blender. And there we go, our character's inside Blender. So we've got our bus and our character ready to go and ready to get into our blend shapes. Before I can actually create some good quality blend shapes, I actually have to subdivide my roof into smaller sections. And for those of you who are new to Blender, I'll talk you through that very quickly. So the first thing you're going to do is you select your roof. Then you go to the top left hand corner, you'll see there's an object mode. You click on the little down arrow, change that from object mode to edit mode, because we're going to be editing now. Once we're in edit mode, we can actually select whether we want to be editing a vertex or a point, whether we want to edit our edges or our lines or our sides. Or we can even edit a plane as well, which is what we're going to be doing in this particular case. So we will select our plane. I want to just show you that this roof actually has 2 planes. So there's the outside roof and the inner roof. And I'm going to have to make sure that I subdivide both sides if I want to create holes in the entire roof. So to do that, you'll have to go to the top right hand corner. There's a little icon that looks like 2 squares, and that's actually the transparency icon. So we're going to go into transparency mode so we can actually change the mesh or subdivide the meshes for the inner and the outer roof as well. Alternatively, if you're not a big fan of transparency mode like I am, you could obviously select the planes on the inside and the outside, as I'm doing here. Once you click on right click and subdivide, you'll see a little window pops up at the bottom. You've got a choice of deciding how many cuts you want to make in that particular mesh. In my case, I'm just doing one cut and I'm basically breaking it down. I don't want to make too many subdivisions, because then this particular bus becomes very heavy in terms of polys, which will obviously slow down when I start animating and editing later on in iClone, and of course in Unreal Engine as well. And once you're happy with the number of subdivisions you've created, like I am, then you can start creating your shape keys inside Blender. To create your blend shapes or your shape keys, you'll have to go to the icon on the shape key icon, which just looks like a little triangle on the right hand side. Inside there, you'll just have to click the plus button to start creating some shape keys. In my case, I've got the basis, which is the original bus. And in my first shape key, I'm naming it landing. And then I want to make sure that I pull the value all the way to 1 as I'm working on this particular shape key. Once I'm done, I'll pull it back to 0. 1 basically means that the shape key is actually active. Okay, finally we can start with our first shape key. So we're going to start off with the alien landing shape key. So we're going to play our animation and then pause it at the right moment. So we'll play it. There we go. Our alien has finally landed on the roof. So what we're going to do is we're going to create basically the indentations inside the metal where the 2 feet are landing. So I'm going to go back into transparency mode. Once in transparency mode, I'm going to start selecting faces again. Remember those 3 icons on top there? I'm selecting the actual faces. Highlighting the faces that I think will be affected, and then I'm literally using the transform gizmo and pulling it down, which is basically the action that's going to happen as he lands. And I can actually manipulate each face individually if I want to. So I'm going to pull that down, pull this section down as well. Let's have a look. See, yeah, you can actually grab edges as well. I'm going to pull this section up. I don't want it to look too even, so I'm just bringing some in and out. And then you can do the same thing for the other foot landing as well. I'm going to just grab this, pull that down, pull that down. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can manipulate it the way you want to, how you think it would happen if a foot was landing there quite heavily. There we go. We've got our first shape key. Let's just mess around with some of this, pull this down. Can you see some of the bottom of the roof is actually coming through, and I'm basically just pushing that down. There we go, my first shape key. As I'm changing the value from 0 to 1, you'll actually see how it's working. Alright, so that's our first shape key. The next shape key will be the one where he steps. Once again, I'm creating my shape key, naming it accordingly, making sure that I'm pulling that one up to 1 again. And now I can manipulate this particular shape key. Don't forget to change the value, and don't forget to add your new shape key in. And I think the process is pretty much the same for every step he's taking, literally. Just checking it from the inside as well, making sure that I'm happy with it. And then the next one would be where he actually bends down. I'm going to bend this slightly where his hand is. I don't want his hand to show on the inside of the bus. So you can basically edit the point, edit the line, edit the plane, as I showed you guys earlier on where those icons are, and manipulate it accordingly. But I'm not going to take you through all the other boring steps of doing this. I enjoy doing this, but I'm sure you'll find it boring watching me do this. But essentially, I'm just checking every body part as he's bending. Yes, his toes as well. Just making sure that I'm creating all the right, basically indentations inside the metal as I'm creating it. So that's the process. The one that I want to show you guys obviously is how do you slice through the metal. So let's have a look at how I created those blend shapes. So to create the cut through and the breakthrough shape keys are done in a similar way. It's actually very similar to what we just did now. The only difference is we switch our edit mode from editing the actual planes to editing the edge. So we click on the middle icon and we start editing the edge. And we can then grab the lines or the edges, and we can use the gizmo to pull them apart, creating what looks like torn metal rather. And yeah, that's as simple as it is. Obviously, we can then just go along the line and decide how we want to tear this metal apart. Being careful not to lose any of the mesh or the polygons. The polygons have to stay exactly the same as our basis polygons. Otherwise, iClone won't read it. So once we've created all of our shape keys and we're happy with them, we can now start saving them and sending them over to iClone. And the way you would do that is you would literally save a number of OBJs or object files, which you're going to be sending over to iClone, starting with the basis file. So change the value of all of the morphs or shape keys to 0, save the basis file, and then you can go down the line. You can literally then increase the value of the next shape key to 1, save that one appropriately, which will obviously be our landing shape key in our case. Shut that down, bring that to 0, then pull up the next shape key. So in other words, we're going to end up with 5 or 6 different OBJ files, which we're then going to import into iClone, and these will create our morph animations. Okay, now we've saved all our OBJ files. We go back into iClone. Once inside iClone, we're going to bring in our first OBJ file, which is our basis bus, by going File, Import OBJ, and we'll bring that in. And as you can see here, because I didn't set the scale inside Blender, my big bus is now a little bus, but that's okay. We can always increase the size. But I'm not going to increase the size now. I'm going to be increasing the size once I've brought all the morphs in. So once I've got my OBJ file inside iClone, I will then go into the Animation tab, and then I'll go to Morph Creator, click on that, and now we're going to be creating our morphs. We'll wait a while for the Morph Creator window to open up. Once it's opened up, we've got our basis bus ready to add some morphs to it. Now it's a simple matter of pressing the plus key and bringing in each morph. And there we go, there is our morph. We can literally slide it up and down. I'm just going to name this appropriately. I'm going to call it landing morph or something like that. And there we go, our first morph is ready in iClone, and you'll do the same for all of the other OBJs. So we'll add another one by clicking the plus key, finding the file, and then bringing them in one by one and making sure that they work. Okay, here you can see my bus with all 7 morphs ready to animate. And animating is actually quite easy. You've got to open up the timeline, and then we can literally play the animation of our character. And as we are playing through the animation, we can decide when we want to bring in the morphs, and the morphs can be brought in by selecting the bus, opening up the timeline, and then once you're inside the school bus in the timeline, you can then choose the morphs, and this is where you'll basically be manipulating and editing the morphs accordingly. So as he steps, as he lands, we'll create that morph. As he takes his first step, we'll create a morph, and so on and so forth until our animation is complete. So this part is relatively easy to do, and it's just a matter of getting the timing correct. And that's basically our tutorial on how to create morph shapes or morph animations inside iClone that you can send through to Unreal Engine. And then before I sent over my bus and my alien to Unreal Engine, I just added a few teenage characters in there and my bus driver in there just to add some more drama inside the scene. And those were basically just drag and drop animations that I added to my characters. And then, yeah, the camera movements as well. But I mean, the actual transferring from iClone to Unreal Engine, I've done a tutorial on that before, so you can have a look at my previous tutorial. And there's a lot of other good tutorials out there that shows you how to transfer all of these animations into Unreal Engine. And that's it. I hope you guys got something out of this particular tutorial. You've learned something. And then, yeah, stay tuned until next week when I bring you another tutorial. And it'll probably be based on the same animation again, but you got to stay tuned to find out more. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe, to like, and yeah, do all of those good things to keep this channel going. Thanks, guys. See you next week. Cheers, bye-bye.